GovState University has selected its next president, Dr. Joyce Esther. Jaguar student media will be interviewing the new president live on Radio Jaguar Wednesday, October 15th. JSM reporter Chris Weber will be sitting down with President Esther at 2 p.m. to ask her questions submitted by the student body. Replays of the interview will air every noon and 5 p.m. on Radio Jaguar during homecoming week, October 27th through October 31st, and again during President Esther's inauguration week at 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. November 10th through November 13th. GovState News and The Phoenix will also be providing additional coverage of the university's 7th president. To see this coverage, follow the QR codes displayed or visit jaguarstudentmedia.org/listen. On September 30th, GovState University's Office of Institutional Engagement and Excellence hosted a beginner's sign language workshop. The workshop was hosted on campus and was open to all members of the GSU community, including students and faculty. The event drew a large crowd of hopeful learners, as in Bretson Hall was almost completely full by the time the lesson began. The informational session was led by Sandy Smigel, a longtime ASL instructor and speaker. The workshop began with the basics, as the audience followed along while learning to sign the letters of the alphabet and numbers 0 through 100. From there, Smigel moved on to some more basic vocabulary before going over fundamentals of sign language, including the use of body language and facial expressions. Throughout the duration of the event, participants were encouraged to follow along by finger signing various words and pairing up with one another to practice basic conversations and spelling. Those who attended the entire session earned a badge as proof for their fledgling steps into the world of signing. Those who were interested in continuing their ASL education also had the opportunity to sign up for an extended program taking place this fall. GovState teamed up with the School of Extended Learning to offer a 4-week course starting on October 7th, and those who complete the full program will have the opportunity to earn ASL credentials. For GovState News, this is Graham Taylor.
There's just so much.
Before we had a flag and we had it so it was positioned above the tent so it would be in the camera. They just moved. What was that?
On September 10th, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed while giving a speech at Utah Valley University. The 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA was rushed from the stage but did not survive. After a 33-hour manhunt, police arrested 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson. Investigators say DNA from a towel wrapped around the sniper rifle, along with the screwdriver left at the scene, directly tied him to the attack. Robinson now faces charges of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. Prosecutors have announced they will seek the death penalty. Kirk's death leaves a major void in the conservative youth movement he founded, as supporters and political leaders across the country continue to react to the loss. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News. On Wednesday, Erica Kirk, widow of Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk, was unanimously named CEO and chair of the board following his death earlier this month. The board noted that Charlie Kirk had previously expressed his wish for Erica to succeed him. Her appointment comes as the conservative youth organization works to preserve his legacy and maintain influence ahead of the 2026 midterms. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News.
Despite the rallying cry of Make America Healthy Again, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s actions as the Secretary of Health and Human Services are doing anything but. The anti-vaxxer and eugenicist in charge of the Center for Disease Control has been doing a poor job of controlling diseases, as across the country measles cases are beginning to reach new highs for the 21st century, at the same time that vaccine standards and availability are under attack, with many public officials calling for his resignation. A Senate hearing on September 4th saw Kennedy questioned by lawmakers from around the country regarding his position as the HHS secretary, after a tumultuous couple of months at the CDC that saw a violent shooting as well as public protests against Kennedy's leadership by CDC employees and citizens alike. The hearing also follows Kennedy's firing of CDC Director Susan Monarez, who was instated by Kennedy just a month before her termination.
On the morning of August 25th, Secretary Kennedy demanded two things of me that were inconsistent with my oath of office and the ethics required of a public official. He directed me to commit in advance to approving every ACIP recommendation, regardless of the scientific evidence, He also directed me to dismiss career officials responsible for vaccine policy without cause. He said if I was unwilling to do both, I should resign. I responded that I could not pre-approve recommendations without reviewing the evidence, and I had no basis to fire scientific experts. He told me he had already spoken with the White House several times about having me removed.
Dr. Deborah Howry, the CDC's former chief medical officer, also left her position, resigning in protest.
I resigned because CDC leaders were reduced to rubber stamps, supporting policies not based in science, and putting American lives at risk.
During the hearing, many lawmakers, including Washington Senator Maria Cantwell, called out Kennedy's anti-vaccination stance, arguing that his disruptive policies will cost lives.
You canceled $500 million of research because the mRNA technology is about continuing the research to be ready for the next flu, influenza, the next pandemic, and you have to do the research.
I'm happy to have a detailed discussion with you about it. You're so wrong on your facts.
You're interrupting me, and sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are. You're the ones who conflate chronic disease with the need for vaccines. The history on vaccines is very clear. This is the 20th century. That's how many people had vaccines and had illnesses. This is the 21st century. This is the decrease, 99% down to 100%. This is what was delivered with vaccines, and you don't want to support that.
As the first flu season of Trump's second term approaches, the CDC as it currently stands is in no form to assist the American public fight these preventable diseases that have been successfully combated for decades. To that end, many states, including Colorado and New York, are introducing legislation or alternative guidelines to allow citizens access to these life-saving medicines. For GovState News, this is Graham Taylor. After deploying the National Guard to Washington, D.C., and threatening to do the same to Chicago back in August, President Donald Trump is once again threatening more American cities with military deployment. Portland, Baltimore, and Memphis, along with others, have been called out by Trump, who is planning on deploying even more personnel to these cities, despite protests from local officials and citizens.
Over the weekend, we learned from the media that Donald Trump has been planning for quite a while now to deploy armed military personnel to the streets of Chicago. This is exactly the type of overreach that our country's founders warned against. And it's the reason that they established a federal system with a separation of powers built on checks and balances. What President Trump is doing is unprecedented and unwarranted. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional. It is un-American.
On Tuesday, September 30th, over 200 National Guard members were deployed to Memphis in order to ostensibly help fight crime. However, just like Chicago and Washington, D.C. before it, Memphis has also seen a decrease in violent crime over the past 5 years. The national crime rate overall has been on a similar downward trend, with the FBI publishing that violent crime was down 4.5% overall from 2023 to 2024. This goes to show that the only reason the National Guard is being deployed anywhere is so that Trump can play dictator and threaten his political opponents. The administration is still planning on sending the Guard to Portland as well, but at time of reporting, no members have yet been mobilized to Oregon.
There's foolish politics, but other than that, nothing's going on.
While the National Guard didn't initially see deployment to Chicago like Trump originally threatened, Immigration and Customs Enforcement raids near the city have been constant throughout the month of September, and the Department of Homeland Security is still considering sending National Guard members in to assist ICE. Rather than removing violent criminals from Chicago's streets, ICE's paper-thin justification for being deployed in the first place, the agency has instead brought violent murderers to our streets, as seen following the fatal shooting of Silverio Gonzalez by ICE agents on September 12th. Gonzalez was murdered during a traffic stop being conducted by agents, and in the report filed following Gonzalez's death, the assailing agent said he feared for his life. However, body cam footage showing the same agent following the shooting has him refer to the injuries as, quote, nothing major, end quote. Public outcry from Illinoisans angry at the presence of ICE in their state has been loud and consistent. Protests outside of an ICE holding facility in Broadview have been a daily occurrence for weeks on end, but as in other places of the city, ICE agents escalate violence even in the presence of peaceful gatherings. Agents at the facility have been filmed shooting pepper balls and tear gas at protesters, attacking congressional candidate Kat Abou-Gazala, and arresting journalists and other community members. Despite these fierce attacks, everyday people keep showing up to protest these injustices, and these actions must continue in order to combat the ever-increasing wave of fascism washing over our country. For GovState News, this is Graham Taylor.
On Thursday, oil giant ConocoPhillips announced plans to cut as much as a quarter of its global workforce, eliminating between 2,600 and 3,200 jobs. The company currently employs about 13,000 workers and contractors worldwide, and most of the layoffs are expected to take place before the end of the year. Executives say the move is a part of a broad restructuring effort called Competitive Edge, which will overhaul management structures beginning in mid-September and continue through 2026. ConocoPhillips pointed to rising cost pressures and production expenses of roughly $13 per barrel as key drivers behind the decision. This news rattled investors, with the company's stock falling about 4%. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News.
On September 8th, the Wall Street Journal published an article containing a letter that President Donald Trump allegedly sent to convicted pedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on his 50th birthday back in 2003. The letter was a part of a birthday book of cards and gratuities sent to Epstein by his friends and associates at the time, which the Wall Street Journal began reporting on back in July. Following the initial report, Trump claimed that any letters signed by him were fake, and even after the recent public release of the book, Trump continues to deny his involvement. The letter, which shows a conversation between Trump and Epstein narrated in the third person, is surrounded by a crude drawing of a nude feminine figure, with a signature at the bottom resembling pubic hair. Some of the lines attributed to Trump include "Enigmas never age" and "A pal is a wonderful thing," both directed at Epstein. Following the release of the Wall Street Journal articles, Trump filed a lawsuit against the publication, authors, and the parent company. After the birthday letter had been made public, several high-ranking conservative officials and members of Congress were asked about the document. Representative Nancy Mace, Representative Don Bacon, Representative Jim Jordan, and Speaker Mike Jordan all dodged questions related to the book, downplayed the president's relationship with Epstein, and said they had no interest in investigating the president's relationship with the known convicted pedophile and criminal. Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and other prominent public figures also appeared in the book. On September 26th, House Democrats released 6 pages of personal files from Epstein's ledger. The files were given over to the government by Epstein's estate as part of a subpoena from back in August. In the files, meeting details between Epstein and billionaire Republican donor Peter Thiel, billionaire and Trump ally Elon Musk, billionaire CEO of Microsoft Bill Gates, and former Trump cabinet member and far-right pundit Steve Bannon can be found, among others. The documents include a reference to Musk visiting Epstein's island in 2014 and dinners with Thiel as recently as 2017. Another document showed a meeting was scheduled to take place between Bannon and Epstein in February 2019, just months before Epstein's death on August 10th. The release of these documents comes weeks after the White House hosted a dinner with Silicon Valley CEOs and leaders in attendance, including Gates, Sam Altman, Tim Cook, and Mark Zuckerberg. Over 8,000 documents were turned over by the Epstein estate to the House Oversight Committee. The committee plans to release even more files in the future as the investigation into Epstein and his associates continues. For GovState News, this is Graham Taylor.
On Tuesday, new federal data revealed that electricity costs are rising much faster than overall inflation. Prices jumped 5.5% over the past year compared to an inflation rate of just 2.7%. While gasoline and other energy costs have eased, electric bills keep climbing. Analysts point to costly upgrades, soaring demand from data centers and electric vehicles, volatile natural gas prices, and regulatory hurdles as key factors driving rates higher. Experts warn the trend is not slowing down, with projections showing electricity costs will keep rising through 2026. For many households, that means power bills will remain a growing strain on family budgets. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News.
Following the murder of Charlie Kirk on September 10th, multiple private citizens and public figures around the United States were fired from jobs regarding comments made about the event. The most high-profile of these firings was the pulling of the Jimmy Kimmel Live late-night talk show, which was briefly off the air after ABC made an announcement to preempt the show on September 17th. Nexstar, the largest television station owner in the United States, also made an announcement to pull the show from their stations on the same day. Nexstar is currently waiting on a pending deal to purchase Tenga, another broadcast media company, but still needs FCC approval. A Nexstar spokesperson said that the decision to preempt Kimmel was entirely made by Nexstar, with no involvement from the FCC. However, hours before any announcement to preempt Kimmel were made, Chairman of the FCC Brendan Carr made a public statement on conservative pundit Benny Johnson's talk show regarding Kimmel. During the interview, he said that ABC and similar broadcast affiliates could, quote, do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct and take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead, end quote.
The head of the FCC, Brendan Carr, who works for Donald Trump, put out a tweet yesterday that said we can do this the easy way, which is that ABC suspends Jimmy Kimmel, or we can do it the hard way, which is the government, Donald Trump's government, takes action against Jimmy Kimmel and put ABC in an impossible position. Now, ABC should have stood up to the FCC and fought them, but this is exactly what we saw also happen at CBS with Stephen Colbert as the Paramount merger was at risk of not being approved. Colbert is axed. And now Donald Trump is targeting Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon, two individuals who have not, as far as I know, have not said anything that Donald Trump finds offensive as it relates to Charlie Kirk. He just doesn't like them because they make fun of Donald Trump.
Sinclair Broadcast Group, another major television station owner in the U.S., also decided to stop broadcasting Kimmel's show. Following this announcement, Sinclair also said that they would air a memorial service for Kirk, who was an inflammatory racist bigot, during Kimmel's usual time slot on Friday, September 19th. However, Sinclair's stations instead ended up airing an episode of Celebrity Family Feud instead of either Kimmel's show or the Kirk Memorial Special. ABC, Nexstar, and Sinclair all claimed that they were pulling Kimmel's show over offensive remarks he made about Kirk. However, Kimmel's remarks during the monologue in question were aimed at Trump, his administration, and his followers, not Kirk or his family. Kimmel's most offensive statement was that MAGA Americans were trying to score political points using Kirk's murder, a statement which is not only not offensive, but is completely true. President Trump also could not resist making a statement on the matter. In a social media post, he incorrectly refers to the cancellation of Kimmel's show, which had only been preempted at that point, and also calls for the cancellation of other late-night talk show hosts, including Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers. Following all of these announcements, the public backlash was loud and immediate. Calls for people to boycott ABC and ABC-affiliated products began populating social media feeds, and people did begin to take action. En masse, customers were canceling Hulu and Disney Plus subscriptions, as well as canceling trips to Disney theme parks. Less than a week after the initial announcement by ABC to preempt Kimmel's show, the Walt Disney Company made a statement on September 22nd to reinstate Jimmy Kimmel Live, and the following day, Kimmel was once again hosting the show. Sinclair Networks originally refused to air Kimmel even after Disney's announcement, but by September 26th had revised that decision and returned the show to their networks. While the attempted cancellation of Kimmel is a worrying sign of the times and a blatant attack on free speech by the government, those without his fame are still facing being laid off or have already been laid off for exercising their First Amendment rights. Multiple reporters, including MSNBC's Matthew Dowd, teachers, Secret Service agents, and more around the nation have been fired or had administrative action taken against them for things supposedly posted about Kirk. These firings have been assisted by websites like Charlie's Murderers, a hub created by fans of Kirk dedicated to collecting and disseminating information on those speaking out about the horrible things Kirk said in his life. Sites like these have led to the doxing and firing of the average American for the simple reason that they didn't want to say anything nice about a high-profile bigot who preached violence. While most of these firings don't fall under infringement of the First Amendment, as private companies have no obligation to the Constitution, it is a worrying trend to see the right attempt to silence their opponents at the public and private levels. For GovState News, this is Graham Taylor.
On Thursday, the Powerball jackpot soared to an incredible $1.7 billion, now ranking as the third largest lottery prize in U.S. history. The boost comes after no ticket matched all 6 numbers in Wednesday's drawing, which means the prize rolls over once again and will be up for grabs in Saturday's drawing. To put all this in perspective, this jackpot is only topped by the record-setting $2 billion won back in 2022 and the $1.7 billion taken home in 2023. Players who choose the annuity option would see the full $1.7 billion paid out over time, while the cash payout sits at roughly $770 million before taxes. And convenience stores nationwide are bracing for long lines of hopeful players who are looking for a lot of money. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News. Nearly 90,000 Toyota, Lexus, and Subaru EV vehicles are being recalled because of a windshield defroster defect. Officials say a software bug can cause the defroster to fail, reducing visibility and creating a serious safety risk, especially as winter approaches. The recall highlights how critical software has become in today's EVs, where glitches can directly affect driver safety. Industry analysts note the move underscores automakers' responsibility to act quickly when technology problems arise as EV adoption continues to grow. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News. On Monday, a powerful earthquake struck eastern Afghanistan, leaving more than 1,400 people dead and hundreds more injured. The 6.0 magnitude quake destroyed over 5,000 homes and leveled entire communities across the provinces of Kuna and Nangarhar. Rescue efforts have been slowed down by rough terrain, heavy rains, and ongoing tremors, forcing Afghan forces to airdrop commandos by helicopter just to reach survivors. Conditions on the ground remain dire, with thousands left homeless and critical infrastructure reduced to rubble. International relief has been slow to arrive as Afghanistan continues to face financial struggles and political isolation. Humanitarian groups are warning that without urgent assistance, the disaster could worsen into a full-scale crisis. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News. On Thursday, a group of Democratic senators led by Jeff Merkley of Oregon introduced the first ever Senate resolution urging the United States to recognize a demilitarized Palestinian state alongside Israel. The message is symbolic and unlikely to move forward in the Republican-led chamber, but it highlights growing momentum within the Democratic Party, especially among progressives critical of Israel's actions in Gaza. The resolution calls for a Palestinian state based on pre-1967 borders under the Palestinian Authority. Independent Senator Bernie Sanders signed on as a co-sponsor, and House Democrats are pursuing a similar effort. Recent polls show nearly 60% of Americans support U.S. recognition of Palestine, echoing moves by U.S. allies preparing to back Palestinian statehood at the UN. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News.
Who are they? Why are they doing this?
Does there have to be a why?
Welcome to Hollywood Buzz, your source for the latest news in the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Graham Taylor, and today we'll be looking at upcoming releases, celebrity news, and the latest from Hollywood. Let's get started. The Strangers Chapter 2, the sequel to last year's modest horror success, The Strangers Chapter 1, released on September 26th. The series is set to be a trilogy, with Chapter 3 set to release next year. One Battle After Another, the newest movie from Paul Thomas Anderson, released alongside The Strangers Chapter 2. But Anderson's explosive thriller starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Teyana Taylor, and Benicio del Toro took home the top spot at the box office. The 77th Primetime Emmy Awards were held on September 14th, and this year's ceremony featured a number of historic firsts. Apple TV's The Studio took home 13 Emmys, a first for a comedy series in a single year, with Seth Rogen also winning Outstanding Lead Actor for his role in the series. Tremel Tillman won Best Supporting Actor in a Drama Series for his role as Seth Milchek in Severance, becoming the first black man to win the award. Owen Cooper, who plays Jamie Miller in Adolescence, became the youngest actor to win Best Supporting Actor. Other big winners from the night include The Pit, Andor, and The Penguin. The Late Show with Stephen Colbert also won for Outstanding Talk Series.
Sometimes you only truly know how much you love something when you get a sense that you might be losing it. And 10 years later, in September of 2025, my friends, I have never loved my country more desperately. God bless America. Stay strong, be brave, and if the elevator tries to bring you down, go crazy and punch a higher floor. Woo!
Television and Broadway actor Fran Drescher was awarded her own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on September 28th. Drescher has been a longtime actor and is most well known for her role as Fran Fine from The Nanny, and is also the current president of SAG-AFTRA. Rapper and Latin pop star Bad Bunny is set to headline next year's Super Bowl halftime performance. Super Bowl 60 will take place on February 6th, 2026. For GovState News, this has been Graham Taylor with the latest Hollywood buzz.
On Monday, February 24th, a dramatic incident unfolded in Des Moines, Iowa, when a car fleeing from a traffic stop crashed into the Freedom for Youth Ministries building. The pursuit began after officers attempted to stop the vehicle, which then sped off, losing control and smashing into the building. 2 passengers in the car were injured and taken to the hospital, but fortunately, no one inside the building was harmed. The driver fled the scene and remains at large. Security footage from the building captured the crash, showing the car veering off the road and colliding with the structure. Authorities are currently investigating the incident and searching for the driver. The Freedom for Youth Ministries is working with officials to assess the damage and ensure the building's safety. This has been Noah Norris for GovState News.
On the evening of March 12th, an explosion inside a maintenance hall at Texas Tech University set off fires and power outages. School officials issued evacuation orders for several buildings and canceled classes for the rest of the week. An alert sent to the campus community said the source was an explosion at a nearby substation that caused the widespread outages, but later updates said it was a manhole. The engineering section of campus was evacuated Wednesday night due to a gas odor. Some students evacuated to the architecture building, which also lost power, while others tried to help someone stuck in an elevator. Multiple manhole covers on campus were emitting different colors of smoke and fires. Videos on social media show green fires erupting from the ground, as well as a heavy presence of firefighters on campus. The power started to come back on Thursday, several hours after the explosion, and students were advised to not only avoid the engineering section, but all of campus. Power was shut down to the entire campus while repairs were underway. No injuries were reported from the incident. This is Analia Vey with GovState News.